have everybody introduce themselves and hopefully introduce yourself. What is your role, and how would you well, actually, let's just do that. Go ahead and tell us about yourself and something a little personal, like just something on the side, and then we can go on with the questions. So we're gonna go in the order of Vicky, Angelica, and Sahil.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Vicky Flores. I'm a business planner at Xbox and under the product marketing management ACE rotational program at Microsoft. And so that's a program in which I get to rotate from, so this year at Xbox, next year I'll be at a different part of Microsoft, and I can try out something that's different than business planning. And so that's kind of a unique rotational program that Microsoft offers. And alongside with that, I did the internship as a part of that program, which I was also at Xbox in the summer of 2019. And I guess something personal about me is I'm originally from Ecuador, but I grew up in the Middle East. And so I grew up moving around a lot and am now located here in Seattle.
Well, I would say you're like a global person. That's actually really cool. You probably have a very good perspective on like, international perspective. Just cool. I like that. Angelica?
Hi, everybody. My name is Angelica. I'm a senior at UC Berkeley right now, and I study business administration and toxicology, and I'm going to be an incoming APMM at Google. And I was the APMM intern last summer, and I was on the Google Pay team. So if you used the new revamped Google Pay and all that stuff, I was part of that go-to-market strategy. And on the side, I also make content online about college and lifestyle and new grad stuff. So it's just Angelica Saahil on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And something interesting about me, I'm from the Southern California area. I'm from Orange County, and I grew up as a competitive figure skater.
That's cool. Man, if this was a networking question, I'd ask so many questions. All right, Sahil, your turn.
Hey everyone, my name is Sahil. I graduated from UC Davis last year with a degree in managerial economics and 2 minors in public health and technology management. Right now, I do product marketing at a global tech startup called Unbabel in San Francisco. And then I also do freelance product marketing consulting on the side too. Fun fact about me, I'm also a dancer and a choreographer. So I spend a lot of my free time doing that. But yeah, other than that, I'm excited to be here with you guys today. And hopefully we get some clarity on what exactly product marketing is and if it's the right role for you.
Yeah, like, right before we had this call, I think, Vicky and Sahil was saying, this different perspective because Sahil is working at a startup and Vicky is working at a large tech company. So the function could be very different. So we don't know. So I guess we'll find that out. And again, remember to ask your questions, all right? Okay, so I want to first start. I want to ask, from your specific understanding, your experience with, product marketing, what does that look like? And, how would you describe it to somebody who, have never heard of this role before? We're going to go in the same order, Vicky, Angelica, and then Sahil.
Sure. So as I was kind of mentioning beforehand, I think there's a lot of ways to describe product marketing, and it really changes depending on what environment you're in. So, as Lynn mentioned, startup versus big company, but even within, let's say, a big company, the organization that you're in. So for example, Xbox or otherwise. And so I would say for Microsoft specifically, there are a few different roles that fall within product marketing. And so that might be helpful to understand. So for example, I'm a business planner, so I support the marketing organization through data and data analysis. And so that's kind of like my kind of niche within product marketing. But there's other roles, for example, like marketing communications, where you might be working more with creating assets and working with agencies. Or you might be a go-to-market specialist in which you're taking a product or service to launch. And so you're more kind of ingrained in those details. And so that's just kind of like a quick overview of like different roles you can have. But what I was kind of joking, the easiest way I've heard it described is think of being a PM within the marketing organization. And so what that means really is that you're going to be focused on whatever product or service to kind of meet those marketing needs, whether it's positioning or messaging, and you're going to be interacting with a variety of different stakeholders. And so it's similar to that PM role in the sense that you're, interacting with all these different stakeholders and you're kind of that main person that brings it together. However, for PMM, again, you're in that marketing organizational role. And so those are your core goals.
Yeah, so can you kind of tell us more about your day-to-day? Like, how would you approach that? What do you have to do and how do you go about your day? Yeah.
Yeah, so as a business planner for Xbox, a lot of that, for example, would be forecasting. That's a lot of my time would be, for example, new games that are coming to market. I have to work with the finance team, so that's one of my stakeholders, as well as the marketing leads for each game, to basically help come up with a forecast of, for example, revenue or sales of how that game's going to do in the next fiscal year. So that's one example. Or, for example, I also work with Game Pass. So with the subscription service, sometimes looking at PSM, which is post-sale monetization. And so how much are people spending on top of the base game? So, you can purchase a video game, but then maybe you're buying a battle pass on top of that, or different skins. Anything on top of that is called PSM. And so I do segmentation analysis to see how consumers are spending. And so that, I would say, is definitely a more kind of data-driven role within product marketing. That's definitely not the case for all product marketing roles, but specifically what I do, those are some of the things I do.
So I want to ask one more question, because you say like you're product lead at PM in marketing. So in terms of communication, who do you talk to?
Sure. So for me specifically, I talk to a lot of like the developers for different games and the studio team. So each game at Xbox might have a different studio. So I specifically work with publishing, which are like our first party studios. But for new upcoming games, I could be working with like Ninja Theory as a studio, et cetera. And so that's one part. I also work closely with finance, as I mentioned, on all the forecasting. So finance is another key stakeholder. And then Marcom, so as I said, they're the ones in charge of all the assets. For example, for E3, if we're doing a showcase and we have to have all the trailers for the different video games that are coming out, they're the ones who, are talking with agencies of creating like the best asset that's going to have really dope music, great graphics. And then I basically get to see those and give my feedback of saying, we actually want, our forecast says that, we want this to, hit X number of sales. And currently that asset, I don't think is going to help us reach that target. I think we need to do X, Y, and Z. And so that's what I kind of mean with like, my decisions are very data driven, and I help the other stakeholders kind of reach those decisions.
Wow, that's actually very in-depth. I really like that explanation. Angelica, do you agree with your experience at Google, or can you elaborate on your role?
Yeah, I had a lot of similarities to Vicky. Some positions more data-driven, some more creative. Specifically at my product team that I was on, so it's a rotational program, and I was on Google Pay, so it's like a fintech, and I did a lot of go-to-market strategy, consumer behavior, like insights, putting together decks, strategy, like where survey results were, because a lot of times tech companies will work with the agencies who do that surveys, those consumer groups, and then taking that, digesting that, and then giving recommendations. So that was things that we're doing. And then I also led a lot of the social strategy. So that's mostly like my area of personal expertise of doing social media content. So it was really cool to see some of the social media creators I recommended. They ended up like the final people who were in the campaigns and stuff. So that's kind of the gist. I would say what product marketing at Google really is. It's a mix of marketing work, strategy work, consulting work, and a little bit of creative stuff, because some people are doing copy marketing, even though we hire like agencies to do the writing and the copy and the grammar and the catchphrases or whatever. You still write the bare backbones for a lot of it, and
Concept.
a lot of it. And the final say is really on Google's team, and it's you give the green light and you give the revisions to these agencies. So there's a lot of really room for a large range. So if you're interested in any of those things, it's been a really great opportunity. And when I go back to Google, I don't know what product I'll be on, but probably be doing similar work.
So would you say, like from your case, like in the role, the name is manager, would you say you have a team that you constantly have to communicate? Do you have a single team that you're in, or it's just whatever product is coming your way, and so on?
Yeah, I think for the first round of rotations, it really depends on headcount, because the product turnover, or there's tech companies have new things coming out all the time. So I'll get to know what product I am on a month before I start. So in August, I'll know what product. But I believe, especially like returning interns, they try to put you on a different team so you can learn and like really like diversify your skill sets.
That sounds good. I think now it's a good segue to talk to Sahil and from his experience. Like, and now I kind of want you to talk about, you know, your startup experience. Do you agree with what Vicky and Angelica mentioned, or do you see yourself having a different role?
I think agree is like the wrong term to use. More of, I mean, it's crazy because everything that they just said is vastly different from what I do.
Wow, that's crazy.
And so, I mean, the simplest way for me to explain it is I think of myself as like an internal consultant. So product marketers are almost like multipliers in the sense that a lot of our value comes from actually empowering other people in the org to do their jobs better. And it's a super cross-functional role, and I think product marketing is probably the only role other than like HR or like legal or like finance that like touches every single aspect of the org. So on Monday I could be working with product, on Tuesday I'm working with marketing, on Thursday I'm working with sales, on Friday I'm working with customer success. It's very fast paced, and especially at a startup, I'm not really like concentrated in one area. So like Vicky was talking about how she's more of like a data driven PMM. My boss uses the term a full stack product marketer to describe our team because we're kind of expected to do everything. So that means messaging, positioning, product launches, go to market, competitive intelligence, market research. Like I constantly have like 4 or 5 things going on at once, which is actually works out great for me because I have a really short attention span. So I get to switch projects like literally every 2 or 3 hours. As soon as I get bored, I just move on to the next thing. But I see a comment also in the chat about stakeholder management, and I think that PMMs talk a lot about like narrative building and pushing out products and stuff. But one thing that we don't talk enough about is actually internal alignment and cross-functional collaboration, which becomes a huge, huge responsibility of product marketing because again, we kind of are the bridge between product and engineering and design, and also all the go-to-market teams like sales and customer success. So we're kind of like the people that are mediating a bunch of discussions or trying to get people in the same room and come to a consensus. So I would say like for people that are new to product marketing, a lot of it comes down to actually moving the organization forward onto one goal, which is a lot easier said than done.
Okay, so you mentioned that you have a lot of responsibilities and a lot of tasks, like because again, you're in startup. I mean, that's expected you wear multiple hats. Well, I mean, for you, what would be the top 3 responsibility that you have as like the core role? Because like let's say that when you apply to the role, the job description, what is it?
Yeah, I would say there's like 4 or 5 like core competencies that all product marketers should be really great at. The first is messaging and positioning. That is like basic product marketing. Like positioning is the strategic exercise that you do internally that kind of you try to figure out exactly what differentiates you from all your competitors. So where is your position in the market? And the way I like to think about it is literally like an axis, and you're literally positioning yourself on this like map of like where do you stand amongst a bunch of different competitors, right? And that's an internal thing. Messaging is now actually the clarity on what you say to kind of elaborate on your positioning. So and then copywriting is the cleverness of like how you actually say it. And that's when like agencies come in or vendors come in. But so what product marketers do is we're responsible for actually like determining what is our position in the market. And we're kind of like the pulse of like the customer or the market landscape. And then messaging is like a bunch of like, again, internal exercises of like, we have this ongoing doc of like what our key value propositions are, what our messaging flows are, what are the outcomes for customers. So that's like one big responsibility. The other one is sales enablement. So a big responsibility, again, at least for startups. I know I've interned at LinkedIn 2 summers ago, and we had a whole sales enablement function there. So again, this doesn't apply there. So that's where it gets a little tricky. But another big responsibility of product marketing is sales enablement. And that is really getting the sales team to be able to sell really confidently and actually pitch the value of your product, your service, or your company to people all around the world in a very consistent way. So product marketing is in charge of doing a lot of enablement materials, trainings, creating curriculum. So that's like one thing. And then I would say the next big thing is product launches. So there's like a saying, and I actually hate this saying. It's like product managers create a product, put it on the shelf, and then product marketing managers take it off the shelf. I think that's not really doing justice to the product marketing role because we do a lot more than just product launches. We have a lot of say when it comes to doing the research and making sure the product team is building the right stuff. And we actually have a sense of like what's in the market. So in that sense, like we do have a lot of say there. But product launches are a big thing. So normally there is like a handoff, I would say, of like when product managers like, okay, this product is ready. Let's come up with an integrated announcement plan. And then we basically my boss says this a lot. She's like, we're leading an orchestra. We're trying to get everyone in the organization aligned on the same page. coordinate a bunch of marketing activities, and product marketers are kind of leading this launch. So just this past week on Wednesday, I had a launch, and I was actually the lead on that launch. So it meant that I was coordinating between our customer success team, holding demos for them, working with product to make sure all customers are migrated, working with marketing to come out with campaigns and blog posts. So it's a lot of just like making sure everyone's kind of doing the same job, which again, come back to my first statement that I said is you are literally an internal consultant.
I have so many questions and I can't remember all of them because everything you said is just packed and dense with information, right? As I love that. So, I mean, from everything you're saying, it makes it sound like you have to understand the product really, really well. Like probably, I don't know, like your knowledge, because you're trying to sell the item because you have to understand what is the benefit, right? So, I mean, what would you say how is it different from like a regular marketing role? I mean,
yeah. So, I mean, I saw that was one of the questions that you sent me earlier, and
yeah.
I started thinking about this more, and I realized that I think a lot of companies today are shifting and adopting more of a product-led growth strategy, which means companies that put out the latest products, the newest features are the companies that are going to be thriving. And what that means for marketers is that we also need to become product-driven because now we're required to actually understand the product at a much deeper level. And in this world now, like every aspect of marketing has to be rooted in a deep product experience, which means when we're selling this product, everything needs to be integrated in the most consistent way. So that means product pages, landing pages, sales enablement materials, anything that you see about a product needs to be very, very heavily driven in it. So the way I like to think about how it's different is it's a little more strategic because as product marketers, we're always thinking about like the 5 like what's of like, what is the reason we're doing this? Why are we doing this? Who is the person that's being targeted? And I guess like one line to sum it up is like, we're the people that are kind of framing and creating this message. And then the rest of the marketing org is the people that are actually pushing that message out to the world and trying to get people to like buy it, if that makes sense. So it's a little more strategic and we're focused more on like the bigger picture of like, what problem is this product solving and why are people going to buy it?
Okay, so I think this is a very interesting continuation. Now I want, because now you're saying like, okay, so you have to have a really good understanding of product. What resources? How do you learn about product? I mean, how do you prep for this role? And I think I want to ask like Vicky and Angelica these questions as well. So I'm gonna go Sahil and then Angelica and then Vicky. Yeah.
Should I pick up again?
Yeah, you should pick up again and we go to
sure.
Angelica.
I'll keep it short. So at work, my best friends are product managers. Like I am in meetings with them for like half my day. I have stand-ups with them every single week. They come to my stand-ups. I go to their stand-ups. We're literally like work besties. Like there's no other way to describe it. And because you're so close to them, you have to, it's like interesting. Okay. So I think of product marketers' jobs in 2 ways. There's like pre-launch and post-launch. Pre-launch is when you're defining like the message, the positioning, doing market research. And that's really when you start working with product managers a lot because they're the ones obviously creating the product and they're developing the roadmap. And the relationship there, it gets a little tricky because again, this changes at every company, big tech company, small startup. But a lot of times like you work with them really closely to define like the value. So they're the ones that are creating the value and then we're like communicating the value to customers. So what that means is it's a ton of meetings, it's a lot of demos. You sit in with engineering a lot, you're giving a lot of feedback. And when you want to actually influence the product roadmap or like product development, product marketers will go out and do a lot of market research, bring in a couple customer quotes, bring in a lot of data, and then actually use that to influence what the product team is building. And there's a lot of friction there too sometimes, but it's like obviously healthy friction because we kind of have different goals, right? They're focused on building a solution and we're focused on making sure that the solution is the correct solution. So it's a lot of communication. And I mean, I'll pass it off to Angelica or Vicky to talk about their experiences at a bigger company.
Yeah, go. Thanks so much, Sahil. And Angelica?
Did you want me to expand on Sahil's thing or talk about like how to prep?
Yeah, no, you can go ahead and talk about like from your experience. Like you can add on top of what Sahil said, and talk about your experience. Like how do you prep for understanding the product really well? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's unfortunately or fortunately, did not have any internship experience before my junior year at Google. So If you think like, oh, like I can't get a good internship because I didn't have any experience, like that's definitely not true. A lot of my experience was campus jobs, work studies, my social media stuff I just started. I worked with different nonprofits. So like all experience is really good experience, and making sure like even if it's not working with a software or a tangible product, like really putting in like that product marketing lens of like, okay, like what was our consumer, what's our message, our campaign, like the product marketing. I think the slogan at Google is like, know the like product, understand the user, and that's the magic, or it's like some slogan like that. And so user understanding and consumer understanding is such a big thing at Google. And so, you know, thinking about like when you're consuming products or social media or any form of like, yeah, media, think about like how you're consuming products, like what do you notice doing well in the market, like even social media trends, like what's working, what's not, like really dissect analytically from a from an analytical lens. Like for example, like why does Emma Chamberlain do so well on YouTube? Like think about how she's able to do so well, and why did David Dobrik fall off? Like think, and why, you know, what kind of brands that they work with, how they work with brands, the messaging they use. And so everything is so strategic these days. And if once you start seeing the patterns, it's really easy to catch on. And like social media accounts for a lot of brands and like seeing what kind of trends they're doing. I always tell people, like, if you want to go into marketing period, I think you have to be a really heavy consumer, and it can definitely get overwhelming sometimes. But, you know, news, like TikTok, Instagram, like different marketing, like magazine newsletters that come out, there's like so much out there. And I think consuming is like the best way to learn. That definitely is going to increase your screen time. But I think that it's hard. Like there's a reason we don't put like boomers doing social media or like digital marketing lead, because they don't know and they don't consume. And so I think really being a consumer of products you love, whether that's, you know, tech or CPG products, it's really important to be a really heavy consumer, I think.
Yeah, I think that's really important when it comes to interviews, right? Because I'm assuming the interviewers are going to be, I don't know, like, can you elaborate, Angelica, if the interviewers will be testing you on your product knowledge? What was your experience with interviewing?
Yeah, so not necessarily like specifics of products, but for example, one of the questions I had at my Google interview, I was talking about using Slack in one of my organizations, and they're like, you know, how would I explain Slack to my grandma? And so they really want you to like be able to talk about a product and all its complexities, break it down, make it simple for the most advanced user and also the most basic user. And so those are kind of the more like logical thinking steps that I had to do prepare. But for general, for I think a lot of product marketing roles, a lot of the strategies that people use to prep is similar to consulting. Strategy, data, you know, what can we do better? Is this an overestimate, an underestimate? What we can do next time? So I would prep similar to the way you do consulting cases, because a lot of times they'll give you a marketing case, whether it's a big or small. It can be a small thing like, oh, like market sizing, and then taking that and be like, oh, so how would we do this? And like they kind of small build the storyline. It's like a game of like Mad Lib a little bit. So focusing on consulting, but like with a marketing lens, I think is the best way to prep.
Nice. Vicky, do you want to add on to what Angelica says?
Sure. So I'll talk first about like prepping for the role and then kind of the interview. So in terms of the role, I would say, especially during my internship, the most powerful tool I had was one-on-ones. So schedule as many one-on-ones with, you know, honestly, everyone you kind of interface with, and even people you don't directly interface with. The reason that's useful is because in terms of like, how do you learn about the product or like what people do, is just talk to people, ask them. And it seems so basic, but that was kind of the challenge I gave myself, or the goal I gave myself for the internship, was talk to as many people as possible. And so I had this little journal with like all these, like, instead of like to-dos, it was just like people's names that I kept checking off when I talked to them. But I figured that was really the best way for me to learn, was just, you know, asking people, you know, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? Like, who do you work with? And then they would recommend me to other people to talk to. I would say like that would be step one. I also started asking people for old decks. So, you know, they'd tell me like, oh, I worked on this project where I was doing competitive analysis. And I'd be like, oh, great. Is there anything that you can share with me so I can take a look at your previous work? And everyone was super happy to say like, cool, yeah, I'll send you this deck or this Excel, as long as it wasn't private or like non-public, they would send it to me. And so that was a great way also to see like, how do people format things, especially in business planning, like the kind of templates and how to do this, especially when you're starting out. At least for me, it's a lot easier when you kind of see kind of a template to feel a little more comfortable and start, and you can change from the template and kind of go off, but at least you have something to build off of. So I would say those two things. And then in terms of the interview,
I have one question actually, because I want to ask, like, how familiar were you with product marketing before you got your role at Microsoft, right? And I'm actually, before you answer that, I want to ask everybody who is watching right now, how familiar are you guys with product marketing? Because we want to be able to cater the questions just based on the audience, right? So we're gonna go ahead and send out. I think I'm gonna have Ami send it out real quick. And we're going to wait for the poll real quick, make this a little bit interactive, and then we'll continue with Vicky's comment on interviewing.
Sure.
So, I mean, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for me, before I started the internship, I had never had like another internship in traditional marketing before. I had done finance, I'd done consulting. So that's why I was laughing when Angelica was saying how to prep for the interview, because I remember a lot of triggering moments doing like case in point and like all these consulting interview prep. For me specifically, Microsoft was such a like breath of fresh air when I interviewed for the PMM role, because it was so in consulting, I felt like my interviewers were trying to like watch me fail. Like they were trying to catch me to see if like I would mess up. At Microsoft, they were just trying to get to know me and what I was interested in and what I could bring, instead of saying like, oh, like, can you do this like on the spot? And can I trick you? And, like, did you mess up this number? Or like you forgot a zero? Like it wasn't like that at all. I would say it was more broad questions of, they never asked me about a specific product. Like I didn't have to already know like the intricacies of a specific product, like no high level, like if we're going to talk about Azure, like know a little bit about cloud marketing, but no one's expecting you to be an expert already in the interview. But for example, they would ask me, what is a marketing campaign that you've seen recently that you really liked? And so it's something that's like not as stressful, because it's, especially if you're going into the role, at least for me, like marketing is something that I consume, and it wasn't that I prepped for it. It's just like what I choose to consume because I like to do that. Like I follow all these brands online on social media. Like my Twitter feed is like full of like marketers and brands and all of that, because that's what I like. And so the interview, again, for me was one of my best interview experiences because it was fun. I did my Xbox interview and they were asking me like, oh, like, did you play video games growing up? Like, what are your favorite games? Like, oh, like I told them I played PlayStation, not Xbox. And they were like, okay, why? Like, what could we do better? And so things like that, where it's not that I could have, because everyone asked me like, how do I prep for the interview? And really like looking back, there's not like a book like in consulting or like specific cases you can do, at least for the Microsoft interview. It's kind of just honestly like, it's really tough because like there's no recipe, but I think consume that content, right? If you're going to marketing, like see what other marketers are doing. And so more kind of general questions like that versus like specific case questions, at least for me.
Yeah. And so, I mean, Angelica, you were mentioning about like case study. Were they asking you like case studies and so on?
Yeah, the case was be very similar to consulting cases, but it would just be a marketing case. So, let's say we're launching X product in this nation and our goal is to do this. And then, what will your steps be? And then, you ask follow-up questions, and then, take some time to like create a strategy and then walk through those things with you, and always making sure you have, how you're going to measure impact are really, main goals here, both qualitative and quantitative ways to measure success. That's a big thing, I think, at a lot of tech companies, as they want to know how you're going to measure success. So very like data driven, and being able to, whether that's, number of customers that show up, or how long they were in each store, how long they clicked on the screen, how long they clicked out, everything like that is like easily measurable. So talking about all those things, and then also talking about like, now looking like, you went through the whole strategy and going like, oh, like, now looking at it, maybe here are some things we could do going forward or differently. Like we could also think about doing this strategy or that strategy. And so having that kind of like forward thinking, I think, is really healthy. And so those are kind of the cases that I got, and a few versions of those. And some of them were just like smaller cases of like, they look at your resume and they take experience off your resume and they want to know, oh, like it says you worked with Salesforce. Like, why don't you talk about that a little bit? And like kind of seeing how you do a little problem solving of like specifics and technicals. So yeah, I think consulting prepping definitely helps a lot. And I was prepping mostly for consulting before I, got this position. So I think it does go in hand, but just like Vicky said, be consuming a lot more marketing. And if it's something you enjoy, then you should have, I think naturally you should have like a million things to talk about.
Well,
Yeah, and
actually, so yeah, go ahead, Vicky. Go ahead.
it'll only help, not hurt. Like if you do it, because it's the thinking, and it's I think the most valuable thing about case prep for me for marketing was being able to articulate how I was thinking and how I was processing the information, and be able to like share my thought process with the interviewer. And so it's less about like memorizing things, but it's more about, you know, like when you're given a problem or a situation, how do you break it down into like small components, and then maybe like what metrics, what KPIs are you thinking about? So totally agree with Angelica. I think it's definitely like a useful framework.
So I mean, it sounds a lot like product marketing. I mean, what I'm saying, product management interviews, right? You want to just show the way that you're thinking so that people can follow your thought processes. And also, it's like from what what I'm hearing from Vicky and Angelica is like your roles are very data driven, but from Sahil's point of view, to me it sounds more like more intuition-ish. Would you say that, Sahil, like how reliant on data are you guys, you know, and from a startup point of view, are you focusing a lot on just trying to understand the consumer qualitatively, or are you guys very like data driven as well from in the startup point of view?
I would say it's a little bit of both. I think the reason it comes off as like I'm not as data driven as the other two is because there's a lot of other things that are on my plate, and so I can't get like into the nitty gritty details of like, let me understand exactly who my buyer is, right? That being said, though, we do a lot of market research, and we do obviously qualitative research and then quant research too. So when I first started, my boss and I were actually doing a huge market research study, and all of that is normally just like quant data, right? You're getting large numbers of data to understand who you're selling to, and so we use that data in multiple ways. We use it to guide exactly what we're building, why we're building. So for example, one of the questions like we'll ask our target audience is, what are the integrations that you use in your role or like in your job? And based on what we see, we'll start to plan and actually predict what integrations now our company needs to start building to actually be able to cater to these people. So data is usually always going to be a product marketer's best friend, especially when you're working with product management. It helps really get their buy-in, convince them, get them on the same page as you. And so I think I use data a little differently. But normally if I'm looking for like big sums of data, I'll usually just go to our data science team or like our product team, and they'll pull out a report for me. I normally don't do that kind of stuff in my role. Yeah. I'm more focused, I guess, on like the storytelling and the narrative building of products, and I guess launching them into the world. That's where I guess I'm focused on specifically. But again, like we've talked about a billion times, product marketing literally is so different. And one of the things I wanted to say earlier was I think the role of product marketing changes as your company also evolves. So in like a year, if I'm still at the startup, I already foresee myself doing something completely different than what I was doing, what I am doing right now. So yeah, I think like as the world grows and as technology changes, the role of product marketing is also going to change, and we're going to start to do a lot of different things.
So I mean, like from your experience, like how is it for interviewing for startup for a PMM role?
I think so. I mean, I come from a little different background too. I've never prepped for consulting. My first internship was in product marketing, and literally I decided then and there this was the career for me. So that was like my sophomore year of college, and then that was at a startup. And then the year after, I worked at LinkedIn, and then after graduating, I joined a startup again. And the interview process was pretty different. I would say for internships, for example, at LinkedIn, I was given a case study, and I think it was a general like marketing case study. And again, I did not prep for it at all. I had no idea even what a case study was at the time. And I just kind of winged. I literally just winged it on spot, again, using just general marketing acumen that I already knew of. And that obviously helped me. And then interviewing for the startup role, they look for someone who can wear multiple hats, and they also look for someone who's willing to get pretty deep and like into a hole and just like be dirty and just do a bunch of different things at once. And I think that's a skill that you can bring from multiple roles. The cool thing about product marketing is also like you don't need to come from a specific background. I've worked with people who are product marketers, who were former product managers, who were formal account managers, who were formal content marketers. It's really cool because product marketers, again, like I said, you work with a lot of people, and so any background that you've previously worked in is only going to help you, and it's only going to make you stand out in a very different way. And that being said, if anyone is looking to transition into a PMM role, or like, I don't know, if you're thinking about going into a PMM role, think about what your team you're also interviewing for and what kind of product marketing work you're going to be doing. There's a lot of inbound product marketing work, which is more of like working with product and doing market research and driving the roadmap and thinking about how we're going to sell. And then there's like outbound product marketing, which is more on the go-to-market side of launching, driving adoption, awareness, doing a lot of announcement campaigns, stuff like that. So think about exactly where your areas are. I personally am still trying to figure that out too. I don't know if I like spending all my time with product or if I like spending all my time with sales. That's something I'm hoping to figure out in the next couple of years. And that'll drive my career path, I guess, as a PMM.
I mean, like now, I guess this is the perfect time to ask all the audience the question is like, would you guys be interested in a product marketing fellowship? That's something that PB could consider hosting and creating. And so we're going to send out another poll and see how many of you guys are interested in that. And then we'll continue with the questions again. Like I think Sahil, I think I noticed, from your LinkedIn profile is that you were, part of the Product Marketing Alliance.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So you had the fellowship, right?
Yeah, so that's one of the huge reasons I think I actually got my job was
Nice.
because I was part of this like scholar program, and basically every quarter in the year they take in 25 people who are interested in like ramping up their product marketing skills. And normally the certification is like, I would say pretty expensive. I don't remember exactly how much it is, but it's kind of expensive if your company doesn't sponsor it. But I applied to the program with literally just like a product marketing internship and a couple of like side consulting projects in product marketing. And I was admitted to the program. And basically the fellowship or like the program is a 3-month long thing where basically every single week there's a different topic. So you go over pricing and packaging, which is also, another big topic that some PMMs do is how to price products and how to package them in a consumable way. Research, personas, product launches, timelines, all that kind of stuff. So the program goes through like a 12-week thing. And that's where I got my like product marketing certification. And that website also, the PMA has I was gonna say a bad word. It has a lot of product marketing resources that are really, really helpful and that I still literally leverage in my role. Templates are a big product marketer's friends. So they have a lot of templates, they have a lot of resources, and it's pretty cool. I saw a question in the chat about, since I've worked at a startup and bigger company, which do I prefer? I actually don't know yet. I mean, I've just had an internship and I don't consider that like to be equivalent to like a full-time job. And I don't think I got like the best experience of like knowing exactly what that'd be like. But I purposely did want to work at a startup after college. That was my own choice. Literally just because I wanted to do everything. I didn't want to get pigeonholed right away into like one specific area. But I think in the coming year or two, I'll start to understand exactly if I want to be focused in one specific area or do one specific thing. But yeah, I think I'm also learning as I speak.
I think now I kind of want to ask the same thing for Vicky and Angelica, like from you guys' standpoint, like, do you guys want to try now that you guys heard Sahil speak about his experience with startup, would you guys be interested in transitioning to that, or do you guys still like the large tech and how it operates more? Like, can you maybe kind of give like a comparison about like what between yours and Sahil's?
Start. So actually one of my first internships was at a startup and I loved it. And I think it's a fantastic experience. And Sahil's definitely mentioned this about how you wear a variety of different hats. And so I think especially when you're starting, when you're starting your career in the internships or your first time role, being at a startup is super useful because you're going to learn so much so quickly because you just have to. Because like you're just like that person who's in charge of all those things. And I think the benefits of a big tech company like Microsoft, and specifically a rotational program, is that the reason there is a rotational program is so that you can experience the different roles, right? Because it gets so big. And so if you're just a business planner for 4 years, like I'm going to get really good at data and supporting marketing with data, but that's not what it means to be a product marketer. That's only one part of it. Whereas as Sahil mentioned, like he might be doing a bunch of what Microsoft would consider like very different roles. He's doing kind of a little bit of all of them. And so I think the pros of the rotational program is that you can go really deep into one of them and then rotate into another. So again, like I'm in business planning this year, but next year I'll have to rotate out of it. And so maybe I want to do something more creative. And that's kind of what I'm leaning to, is that as I said before, my experience has been more in like finance. And so I kind of want to get away and get some more skills in the creative storytelling aspect. And so maybe a marketing communications role or a partnerships role. And so for me specifically, I think the reason I didn't go back to a startup is just because being international, a startup just couldn't sponsor me. And so like, that's just one of the things that being international, unfortunately, is something you have to consider. For me, I kind of knew, I did my internship my sophomore year at the startup, but I knew that they couldn't, I couldn't come back for full time. And so that's when I had to start to pivot to like only looking at big tech companies just because they have the resources and funding to actually sponsor me. And so that was just a little bit of my thinking there. And you're off on mute.
Gosh darn it, after how many months of pandemic and I still haven't gotten the mute figured out. Okay, so like, what is this role becoming very popular? Like, was this, your role? I mean, when did it exist? Like, I don't know when did product marketing become like very popular. I know product management becoming very popular nowadays, but not a lot of people talk about product marketing. Do you see it around very often? And if so, how competitive do you think it is? And I want to ask this to everybody as well.
I mean, I think marketing roles have existed for a very long time. I think it's like the branding of product marketing management might be a little newer. I think, and that's definitely something I struggled with for my college specifically. It was like everyone kind of went into finance and consulting. And so when I chose to go into marketing, everyone was like, I studied econ and everyone expected me to kind of go back to my previous internships in finance. And I kind of said, screw that. Like, I don't want to do private equity. Like, get me out of here. Like, I'm going to marketing. And because no one talked about it, it was almost like, you're like, oh, like marketing. Like, it was like this like weird thing. And that's why when Ami invited me to this, I was like, I definitely want to go because I wish more people talked about their roles when I was in college. Cause I honestly didn't know what a product marketer did. And I didn't know how cool it was. And if it wasn't for a recruiter so the reason I got the job at Microsoft was that a recruiter literally slid in my DMs and was like, hey, you look like a great fit for Microsoft.
Nice.
I was about to accept a position in finance. Like I was literally like the next day about to like sign that offer. And then this happened and I dropped everything and changed my mind. And for me, it was such like a lucky thing, but not everyone's going to have that scenario. And so I think kind of being on these panels and talking about the roles, I'm so grateful because I'm having a much better time in product marketing than I would have doing investment banking or something. Like seriously, work-life balance, like the benefits of a big tech company, the actual work itself is so much more rewarding. And so, I think we're going to hear more people talk about PMM because I do think it's underrated. And that was kind of like the title of this panel. And I think, it's kind of like this well-kept secret that's starting to be talked about a little more. And so, I'm excited to get more people interested in it.
Let's keep this event like a secret so that nobody gets the role but us. Okay, but so I just realized we're having some of the chat. I kind of want to go into that, but before that, I think Milad wants to come in and kind of talk to you guys about something real quick, and then we can continue with the questions.
Yes, thanks, Lynn. Sorry to intrude, but as a quick announcement, PB has just finished their first product management fellowship, but we're heavily pursuing a new PMM fellowship, hence this event. So I'm just going to release a code in the chat. So for those of you that are interested in the fellowship, when the application does come out, do use this code. There'll be a section in the application you can pop this code in, so we'll know you flocked from this event there. So that was just a very short announcement. I'll get back to Lynn for Q&A. But whenever that application does come out, keep a lookout on LinkedIn as well as our Slack to see when that fellowship is launching.
Consider a referral. It's a tech thing. Okay, yeah, I didn't know about tech. I mean referrals until I heard about like tech industry. But anyway, so back to the question. So I'm gonna look at some of the chat now. So we have Taryn. Hopefully I pronounced your name right. Hi panelists, can you touch base on the type of North Star metrics that you use on a day-to-day basis? And somebody else wanted to know about it too. So can you guys comment on what metric do you guys use to kind of indicate success? We'll go with Vicky, Angela, and Sahil.
Actually, skip me for a second. Let me think about this. If somebody else has it,
whoever can elaborate on it.
I can go if you guys want me to. This is a really good question, and thank you for asking this, because this is a discussion that I always ask in interviews. Actually, whenever I ask the interviewer, like, what, as a director of product marketing, like, what KPIs do you use to keep your product marketers accountable? And this is always a crazy like conversation, because again, like I mentioned earlier, your role is very dependent on how other people perform their jobs. There's no, like, at least in my experience, there's never been a specific metric that's been tied to product marketing, because again, our roles are to do very like random things, like help obviously increase the bottom line, drive more adoption of the product, increase awareness. There's just a lot of different things happening. And so there's like different metrics that you kind of are looking for. One of the big ones that I do in my job is sales confidence. So every single quarter, I run a sales confidence survey with our revenue team. And what that essentially means is I'm asking them how confident they feel about selling the product of my company, or like pitching the value of the product of our company. And what I'm trying to do here is gather really trend data on understanding over time how much more confident are they getting from all the resources that product marketing is providing them. So earlier this year, for example, my company redid our entire messaging strategy. And with that came new elevator pitches, new messaging pillars, new key features and benefits, all written very differently. And we provided our sales team with like new one-pagers and decks and a customer-facing roadmap and a product on an internal roadmap and all that kind of stuff. And all this is really supposed to be used to help them like be able to really intelligently speak about our company on calls or in emails or when they're communicating with customers. And when I first came in, we asked the sales team, how confident do you feel? And the rating was like a 2.5 out of 5. We just ran it in Q1 again, and that had increased to like 4.1. So that's like one like KPI that we're keeping track of to see how are we contributing to the sales team and getting them to be more confident, which in turn is helping obviously us sell more. So that's just one thing that obviously like a KPI that I'm very, very cautious of.
And do you want to add on it, Vicky, or we can always move on to the next question?
Yeah, so the reason I hesitated is because as a business planner, like my role is like so many metrics. And so I was like trying to prioritize in my head which ones are the most important. I would say for gaming, and a lot of the work I do, at least the recurring ones, are definitely like unique users, purchasing unique users. So differentiating that, and then, doing conversions of like how many of the purchasing users, like what's that percentage. I do then for like subscription service, like we're looking at MAU. For the different games, I also have like Game Pass attribution, which is a metric that's calculated between the number of subscribers playing that game, so the percentage of subscribers playing that game, and the percentage of hours on that subscription service that are spent playing that game. And so that's a metric that's created using two other metrics. And then I have a bunch of financial metrics, I guess, more towards like revenue and PSM revenue. And so again, a bunch. I could definitely drop a list in the chat, but I think usually when you think of a game, and one of my parts of my role is I run our monthly business review. And so this is a monthly meeting that I own and drive and present to our GM. And this is a really cool part of my role because I get to, have that exposure to presenting to like CVPs at Microsoft. And so this deck, every different slide is for one of the different games in our studios. And then each slide is divided into 4 quadrants. And so we have UUs, MAU, Game Pass attribution, and financial. So I think those are like the 4 quadrants for a game.
I love these stories because it really gives us an insight about like how to approach and think about product marketing, and hopefully everybody's kind of having a clear idea. Hopefully that we're helping you so far. Hopefully this is super helpful. So Ami, I'm gonna have her give us another poll about like how helpful this chat has been. And right after, Ami, I'm gonna put you on the spot here because you intern at Microsoft before as a product manager, not a product marketer. So I kind of want, from your experience, and now you've kind of listened to Vicky, Angelica, and Sahil talk about product marketing. I kind of want, from your point of view, like, how different is it, between product management and product marketing?
Just quick clarification. I was a program manager intern at Splunk, but don't worry about it, Lynn. I will be starting at Microsoft soon though, so I will be working with PMMs. And for me, what I realized was, I think Sahil was touching upon this very, very early when he was describing the differences between messaging, copyright, and all those nuances. The PMM I worked with, she was responsible for understanding, like I would have one-on-one syncs with her to really understand what information she needed from me to understand the product better, so she can craft the appropriate messaging to build, whatever collateral we needed that can be given out to the audiences for the feature we're launching. Because for them, they can just put any copyright out there that might not be accurate. They want to understand the product better so they can accurately, promote it and make sure all the consumers understand it. And so that's where I understood like product marketers are not just like putting out anything. They're really trying to understand and work with you as a PM. So that was my experience personally. And I hope people found this useful. I think I was learning even more from this panel than I did that really enhanced my understanding from the little internship I had. So it's going to be great insight, especially starting out as a PM.
Nice. And yeah, if you guys, we have about 4 minutes left, so you guys better put your questions in the chat before we end it. Like we have 4 minutes, like, so hurry up. So then before we end this call, but yeah, I think that was really helpful. And I wonder, so for PMs, like product management, from product manager, they have their own team. So this product marketer, are you guys working by yourself and then kind of have an oversee of the entire product? Or do you handle a product team as well, but only on the marketing side? If that makes sense, if my question makes sense.
That, again, at least in my experience, depends again on the company where you're at.
Yeah, so that's why I'm kind of asking at different companies, right?
So when I was at LinkedIn, there was a specific team that was composed of like different kinds of marketers: product marketers, customer marketers, content marketers, product managers, business operations people that were all working towards launching one specific product. And then obviously that repeats for like a bunch of different things happening in the org. Right now at my startup, there's 4 product marketers and 1 senior content strategist. And we do product marketing for our entire company. Earlier when I actually started, it was just me and the VP of product marketing, and that was it. But recently she's hired more people. And we're not really split, or we kind of split by like functional areas. I do kind of product marketing for a lot of ad hoc things because I'm still like a junior PMM technically. So I kind of support a lot of product launches and feature launches. But our senior product marketers, they're kind of split into like partnerships, integrations, platform. So more like there's one that's concentrated more on like product management, one that's more concentrated on go-to-market stuff, one that's focused on partnerships. So I think it really depends on what kind of product marketing structure your director actually likes, because it could change. Like everyone has their own preferences of how they like to split things up. But for me right now, it's based on like functional areas of the entire org. Nice, thank you. What about you, Angelica?
Yeah, so actually, contrary to belief, Google's headcount is actually extremely small for the amount of like reach and stuff we do, and that's why I think why it is competitive is because they don't hire a lot of people, and so that's why you also do like 3 people's worth of jobs. But it depends on what team you are, but generally you'll be working on a team with other PMMs, and then you're under a big product team. So you'll have like the PMs, and the PMs manage it like under engineers, and then like there would be the UX team, and like, yeah, so like it's like a big tree, and you'll be at Google, at least you're like a PMM team on a product, which you also, report to the PM, like the head product lead. And so you generally won't direct too much depending on how big or small, but like your manager and like stuff like that. So for me, I was on the US consumer Google Pay marketing team, and we were the ones in charge of all of the marketing for Google Pay consumer side. So there's the other side, which is the merchant side, which is working with the businesses, but we were the consumer facing team. And we were, I believe it was a team of 6 PMMs, and I was the intern. So really, really small. Yeah, but some teams I know, I'm sure like Pixel or like Chromebook, they probably have a lot more, and maybe places like, Google search or things that haven't been around a longer, and there's only so much variation that they do in terms of like an outward standpoint. Maybe they adjust differently. But super small teams like Google Health, which is really new, and it's still a lot of it is like research and like working with doctors. I think they only have like a handful of PMMs there. So it really depends on the team and product.
Nice. Vicky?
Yeah, so for my current role, I sit, so again, business planning. So I'm the only business planner, then we have like 4 senior business planners. And then each of us is in charge. So we actually work with the marketing leads for a specific game. And so my specific focus is publishing. And so I kind of also sit on their little team. So I guess, yeah, so I have my business planning team, and then whatever game I'm on, I also kind of join their team for those ad hoc requests.
Nice. And I think now we can wrap up the time because it's been an hour. We hit it. Like, that was super insightful for me. I didn't realize the hour passed already. And that was super insightful. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you to our panelists for being super awesome and like informative. Like, I think I learned a lot about product marketing. I probably more than the typical people who don't know about product marketing. Am I right, guys? So yeah, so thanks so much, guys. Right, and check us out, Product Buds. We have LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, newsletter. Check out our newsletter because I handle a newsletter with Lisa. And so go ahead. And yeah, thanks so much, everyone. And you feel free you can leave now, but I'll be here with the team until I don't know when. But yeah, that's good.